All right, here we are. Welcome to another G4 Guitar TV. We've got some of the guys here from the UK. This is our special UK time slot. What we're going to do today, the first topic, we've already got a topic here that we're going to talk about, which is sometimes it's been referred to as neurolinguistic programming, which was a couple of guys who were, one was a linguist, I think, from memory, and the other one was, I think, a psychologist, and they basically came together and they developed this study. It's probably back in the 50s or 60s. I haven't actually got the history here with me now, but they were just obviously a couple of guys who were working on it and studying it at that time, but there's lots of research been done on it over the years. But what we're really going to talk about here is how your language, it really affects who you are and your personality, and how you actually talk yourself into being who you are. And there's the term neuroplasticity is very commonly spoken amongst neurologists these days, in that our brain is actually can be molded into whatever we like. So our thoughts actually control what we become, and they found that it can be changed, and that's why you do see people who can make dramatic changes in life. And the words that you use have a very strong effect, subtle but strong, on the way that you see the world, that you think about the world, and the kind of actions you take. And it also sends out a signal of the kind of people you attract around you, because your behavior and your language is such a powerful tool that it will either attract or detract people away from you. So we'll just have a closer look at that, and to give you an example of when people ask you questions like, what kind of day are you having, how are you, all these kind of things, the way that you answer that very question can have a lot to do with your outcomes generally in life. So if you want to try and answer it positively, rather than saying, even sort of playing it down, oh, I'm all right, yeah, not bad, getting along, these kind of terms really keep you down and stop you from sort of getting higher. And you might ask yourself sometimes why that happens. And often the reason it happens is because you were conditioned that way as you were growing up. You were around people who did the same kind of thing, and you didn't want to. There's a lot of peer pressure that goes on through our life, especially when we're at school, and this has been talked about a lot as well, how you send a child to school where there's 500, 1,000 other children, and peer pressure is quite traumatic, and it can have this thing where you play it down. We call it in Australia the tall poppy syndrome. You don't want to rise above the crowd because they'll quickly chop you down, and this is just one of those things where if we allow it to do it, it creeps in slowly and starts to dominate our whole life. So you have to ask yourself whether you're making this decision to be who you are, or whether that was, number one, conditioning, or number two, it's fear. It's fear of you're going to get ridiculed. Because I can tell you now, the higher you go up, it was actually Robbins who termed this very nicely. He said, it's not lonely at the top, it's just not as crowded. And I love the way that he put that. So to sort of explain that further, to go on, is that when you're at the top, you're actually amongst very good people. You're amongst people who think like you, behave like you, who are willing to do what it took to get there. And if we use this in a musical sense, then you can imagine, really, some of you have these ambitions, but musically, if you're really working hard, studying hard, practicing hard, being amongst other great musicians, it would have to be part of the gold. I can't imagine that you're just playing and trying to become really good on your guitar to be alone in a room somewhere playing to yourself. I think part of that is that ability to play with those people who are at that level and that standard that you want to be at. I know for me that would certainly be one of the main drivers. But my course in life is more about doing things that are inspiring, especially for my family, for my daughter, and for other people who I work with. And I want to sort of practice what I preach. I don't want to just talk about it and quote from books. I want to actually live it and show that it can be done. and help other people to rise up above. And that's really, I think, if you're driven by that kind of motivation within your business, then you're going to bring people up, because people are attracted to that, and the right kind of people are attracted to that, the kind of people who want to rise up from wherever they are. And it's not that everybody, it's not about you being better than everybody else. It's about just creating this kind of rising tide where everybody who is within your kind of orbit, if you like, is going to rise up with you. So let's dig down deeper and see if we can pull out some examples of language and the usage of language in your day-to-day dealings with your students. So I'll just throw to you guys. Let me go first of all to Shane. Shane, what do you say when a student first turns up to their lesson? How do you greet them?
I say, how are you? How's it going? How have you been getting on? And then I usually mention something about the weather.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
That's it. And,
okay, cool.
And then yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Go.
No, that's it.
All right.
That's how I greet everyone. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll leave it there. I'll go to Ben. Ben Al-Qadi, I'll go to you next.
Yeah,
am I pronouncing that right, by the way, Ben?
Yeah, pretty much. Al-Qadi is how I pronounce it, but that's not the proper Iraqi pronunciation. None of us can do it properly, so.
Okay, cool.
Given up on trying to pronounce it properly, we've just gone for Al-Qadi.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah, so I'll open the door and just say, hello, whoever you are. How you doing? Good week? And then probably someone like Shane knows that I'm roasting right now, but hopefully we'll be okay. Let's get in there and have a go.
Yeah.
I always say, how are you? And I always make sure I answer that question, because most people answer how are you with just a stock response, and I normally answer it with an actual response, which can be a bit annoying to some people because they just want to get on with the conversation. How are you? Done. We've ticked that box. Let's move on. But I actually answer it, and then, oh, you've thrown me off my stride now.
Yeah, yeah. And look, it's a really good opener for when you're teaching to use this opportunity, not just to say how are you as if it's a standard sort of thing that we do in English cultures. You want it to be an opportunity to lift them when they come in, because they're going to learn much better if they're up. If they're down, it really will be less productive, and this has again been shown many times that you want to get them up and use this as the opportunity, and I'll go through that in a minute. Ben Messenger, what's your greeting?
I've tended to sort of stay away from the how are you, because normally if you know someone well, I find you can tell when they walk in the room how they are. So if I can tell someone's a bit and I ask how are you, you know straight away, oh, the wife's left me, or work's been really bad, or this and that. So normally, if I notice that in somebody, I'll try and get onto guitar straight away. But if not, it's not normally how are you, it's what they've been up to, so you can sort of discuss the week, and straight away you're getting them to open up and find out more about their week, rather than just how are you at this precise moment.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so you're not kind of you're kind of avoiding the chance of them giving you a negative answer. Great.
Because obviously I've no idea how bad your week's been, and to a 9-year-old kid, falling over in the playground is the end of the world. To a 50-year-old guy, if his wife left him or he's lost his job, that is quite serious. And either of those things, when you say how are you, that could come out quite easily. So I think within half hour, you want to try and avoid that if you can.
Yeah, yeah. And look, the reality is, I take a sort of a quote from Mark Twain. I had lots of really bad things happen in my life, and a few of them actually came true. A few of them were actually true, and so people imagine disaster in their heads, and let's be realistic. We don't have many disasters that really go on. Most of it's in up here. Yes, there are some real disasters that go on This week, unfortunately, very sad what we've seen in the Ukraine. These things happen to certain people in certain parts of the world, and yes, they are very tragic. And if that happened to anyone you knew or they were close to you, then there's going to be a tragedy in your life. But for most people, most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of what's going on in their head and most of the idea of having a bad day is not really a bad day. So I tend to take the approach that there's a pretty good odds that your day's been okay, that you've had a good day. If you happened that your wife did walk out on you, or it did happen that someone in your family passed away, I think that that's going to come across pretty quickly. So I don't worry too much about that. But I like what you're saying about not being predictable, because I think sometimes it's good to be a little bit different and be unpredictable, and not to be asking the standard question, how have you, even though I do it all the time. I think I like it. I like the fact that you can take a different tack. But I know that often when I would say to students, how are you, sometimes I would do it a little bit differently, and then I would say things like, are we ready? You're feeling good, ready to go today? Great, give me a high five, bang. Now I might say sort of how are you in the very beginning, but very quickly switch to something to bring them up. So if you can really think of that first 30 to 60 seconds when you greet students as an opportunity to lift them, that's what you're trying to do, is you want to get them up a notch. Wherever they're at, whatever their day's been like, no matter how bad their day's been, try and lift them. Now, if they've had something tragic happen to them, and they open up to you, in that first 30 seconds, well, then you've got to come down to their level. You can't go, don't worry about that. People die all the time. You obviously are not going to react in that kind of way. You're going to go, I'm so sorry. You do the normal thing. I don't need to explain. But but presume that they're ready to go. They're there, because most people, even if they do have a tragedy, they're probably not going to come to the lesson on that day if they're feeling, in that state. It's unlikely they're going to turn up for it. So if you can start thinking about that, what you do is you start small, start just the greeting, and then later work on the next elements of your lesson. And the idea that you want to do, think about it like this. I don't know if you guys have ever been to a fitness class or those kind of things, a spin class or a ropes class, whatever. If you go to those classes, imagine if the instructor said, "All right, everybody, arms in the air, yeah, okay, yeah, down, yeah, out to the sides. Oh God, yeah, okay, up again, yeah." Everyone got it? Yeah, good. Let's move on. We know that it doesn't happen, because it would just seem odd and weird. But what they're doing is, it's not just the arms going up and everything moving around. It's also, and Emma's joined us, and Emma's going to be a great example of this. But what you're doing is you're lifting their spirits and you're lifting their mood. And if you can do this in your guitar teaching, then you are going to be a standout teacher. You're going to be someone that they remember. You're not going to be just the average guitar teacher. Now, there are some guitar teachers who are just naturally up. That's their personality, which is great. But most guitar teachers, most people, are generally sort of, in the middle or down a bit. They're not too up. And that's one of the things I loved about group teaching, is that I didn't have to do this for 8 hours a day. I only had to do it for 4 hours. That was really, 4.5 hours, I think, was about the most that I was teaching on most days. So it was easy. It was easy for 4.5 hours to keep it up. It was like a concert, like doing a gig. You just got out there, you gave it energy, but you can't do it 5 days a week for 7 or 8 hours to have this level of energy. You just get exhausted and burn out after a while. So that's kind of, again, another advantage of group lessons, is that you can deliver at a high level and deliver with a lot of intensity. I'll pull Emma in. Emma, can you hear me? Can we hear you? Just test your mic. Make sure you're... no.
She's left a little message.
Oh, has she? Okay, sorry, can't speak just yet. Give me 2 minutes. Okay, she'll be back. Okay, great. All right. So what we want to do, like I said, is just work on that first 30 seconds. So I want each of you to give me an example of something different to say in that first 30 seconds rather than how are you. What's something else, even if how are you is your first opening statement, what are you going to follow up with to lift them a level? Let's see if we can get some examples. Shane?
Say, all right, let's make something happen today.
Okay, good, excellent. Let's make something happen. Let's make this your best lesson ever. You know, are you ready for your best guitar lesson ever? Are you really ready? You know, think of a concert. You know, you go to a rock concert. You know, it's like, are you ready? You know, are you really ready? Yes, we are. Yes, and that's all about getting the crowd up, getting them a level up, because they're going to enjoy the music a lot more if they're in a party mode than if they're just down here. You know, there's nothing worse, and I've been to those gigs where it's full of musicians, and we're the worst of all. We're all guilty of this. We sit there and we go, yeah, that on that 48 bar second beat, it wasn't quite right. I didn't feel it was quite on time. Yeah, and they're all just looking and then like studying the musicians, and they're not enjoying the gig. And that's what we want to do is really lift the crowd. Okay, cool. So I'll go to Ben Al-Qaidi.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, pretty much. Just I don't even say anything. I think it's just the way I'd move, because I open the door there, and it's just about 5 meter walk through the door, and then I'm in the room. So I let them go in front of me, and then they come in, they start sitting down, but I'm basically hopping as I'm coming through the door, just raring to go. I love teaching, so I think they just pick up on that and
totally
have the energy.
Yeah, the energy is big, but I want you to give me something here. I don't want you to get out of this.
Something to say rather than something to do.
Give me something to say. Yeah.
Well, instead of saying "How are you?" I do give them a very obviously leading question. So I say "Everything going well," but that's not really bringing them up. That's more just getting them in a slightly positive frame of mind rather than an energetic frame of mind.
Yep. Yeah, and that's good. You know, using terms like that are leading are very good, because that's what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to lead them. There's no point in giving them a choice. There's not a choice of being negative or positive here. I'm only giving you the choice of being positive. So yeah, using terms like we're good to go, aren't we? You know, we're ready. Yeah. We're ready to make this happen. You know, like feeling good, aren't we? Yeah. Anything that sort of charges them up and gets them moving. Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, Ben Messenger.
Yeah, one of my standard ones is come in, sit down, let's go. So you bang, 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 straight in. That works really well if, like we said before, if somebody is looking a bit down, you just straight away getting into the playing side of it, which is going to be good. You're going to make them feel good, so it's getting straight into it.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I don't, to be quite honest, most of the time when I was running my classes, unless I picked up something was really wrong, I just didn't, and I didn't allow it. I just was like, you know, we're here to learn. I'm going to put you in the best state possible. And again, this is something that Robbins talks a lot about. He talks about state and being in the right state. And you want to get your students in the right state for learning.
David, is this Tim Robbins, the in a game guy?
Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins. Yeah, so he's like a coach, motivator. Yeah, you can look him up. He's done a lot of videos. And he's really the kind of probably the best term I can say. He's the guru of coaches. He works with everybody from, you know, sports stars to politicians to whoever. Yeah, he won some award, you know, the 50 most influential Americans in the last 100 years. So he's very influential. He worked with people, you know, like Lady Di. He coached her for a while. So he's worked, presidents of, you know, Russia, presidents of America, you know, top tennis players, all kinds of people. But he's really made a life, if you like, out of understanding how people succeed. And he started out with NLP, which was one of the things that I talked about earlier. And having one of the reasons I like him is because most of the guys that you see around today who are doing what he is kind of the guru of have come through him. They really were influenced by Robbins. I mean, you can look at, you know, behind the scenes of what they'll often credit him as their mentor. And like anybody, again, he suffers from the tall poppy syndrome because he's sort of, his head's risen above the crowd. He a lot of people criticize him as well, and that's just a natural thing. When you start succeeding, you're going to have just as many critics, sometimes more critics. I always think back to a documentary I saw a couple of years back, which was all about Queen, and how when they first came out, how much criticism they got. They were severely criticised by a lot of people in the industry. Today we just accept them as kind of legends, but back in their day, they were, all sorts of people in all parts of the music industry, pop industry, they're criticising everything from their music. Their songs were too long. It was all self-indulgent. It wasn't what people wanted. They had no style. It kept changing all the time. One minute they're doing, operatic Bohemian Rhapsody, and the next minute they're doing Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And they're just all over the shop. So much criticism they got, but that was who they were, and they stuck with what they were. So yeah. Okay, so I'll bring Emma into it then, since we've got Emma here now. Emma, we're just talking about the lifting people's state through the use of language and the use of, we haven't really talked about body language yet, but talking about the use of language and how important that is. And I was using the example of fitness classes, how you wouldn't go to a fitness class with somebody who didn't sort of project that energy and that let's do it, let's make it happen. And because Emma runs fitness classes, she totally understands and gets this. Yet we see music teachers all the time doing it. And so what advice would you give, Emma, based on what you know, in the music teaching kind of capacity? A student comes in, or a group of students, how do you get them how do you lift their state?
I think you have to approach your lessons like it's a performance. So from 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour before you go on stage, you have to get into the zone of doing your performance. So you might have a pre-performance ritual that you do before you actually do a gig. You can do the same kind of thing before you teach, whether it's go and hype yourself up, or go and have a cup of tea and calm down and focus and work through what you're doing today. Look at your timetable, just so you're not rushed and you're not flustered when the first student comes in, because otherwise obviously they're going to pick up on that. Which is really important, and it's kind of, you put your game face on. That's probably the best way to explain it. Perfect.
And that's again, if you look at most successful athletes, most people who are performers, actors, singers, whatever, bands, they have rituals. As Emma pointed out, they have a ritual that they follow before they do a gig. Things like that I used to do. I should go to the studio at least an hour before I started teaching, and I would practice, and I would have no interruptions. I wouldn't have any mobile phones on. I wouldn't accept anything. I'd lock the door, and I would just sit there and I'd practice for an hour before I started teaching, because that meant I felt warmed up, I felt good, and I was in the mood. I also did things like I would listen to some inspiring music before I might listen to an inspiring talk. I would do all these kind of things to put myself in the mood, and occasionally I didn't do that. And there were, one of the worst things that I did on the odd occasion was take a call at the last minute before I was about to teach with someone with a problem. And it could have been a student, it could have been family, friend, whoever. Ringing me up with some kind of problem or crisis or whatever. And it wasn't very often, but occasionally that would happen. And that would really put me off, and I'd have to get back in the zone to get started again. So what you want to do is make sure that you have this kind of space between, and that's why when teachers would turn up, we hired lots of teachers during the G4 Schools Day and back in the Learn to Play Music Day. We would hire a lot of teachers, and when they would turn up literally a minute before they were about to teach, rushing into their lesson, I would just be like, how can you do that? You're in a rush, you're in a fluster, you're not in the zone. And that first student, unfortunately suffers because of that. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of ritual to really put you in the mode. Great, fantastic. So if we get back to language, because that's kind of where we're talking about, we'll just spend another couple of minutes on that, the kind of words that you would use. Let's just have a quick look at the teaching itself. And if a student makes a mistake, how do we deal with that? What do we say to them? Shane, I'll go with you. What do you say to a student who makes a mistake? Damn you! How dare you!
Well, usually I just say, that's fine, do it again. And if I see that they're getting frustrated, I tell them that I make mistakes all the time, because if you're not playing stuff, because you have to play stuff that you're bad at to get better. So I try to reassure them that, it happens to me. That's usually my go-to thing. And just to tell them to that, progression requires sounding bad, and that's just the way it is, and just accept it, and we'll move on and do it a bunch of times. And usually, if someone's stuck on something, I'd say, all right, we're just going to play it 10 times in a row, and the 10th time, they'll have obviously played it better than the first time, so that's what I usually do.
Fantastic. So
upset about making a mistake,
Yeah, cool. You normalize it, and that's the key to it. Is students, they often feel that they're supposed to get it right, that it's a test. They feel that everything is a test, and when you normalize that kind of that learning experience, this is not a test. This is learning, and that's what I would often say to students. This is not a test that I'm pushing you here to the limit on something here, and I expect you to make lots of mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, it means it's too easy. So we need to sort of up the ante a little bit. So that's great. Ben Al-Qadi, what's your take on that one? What would you do? What do you say to a student who makes a mistake?
It's very similar to Shane. I make sure that I don't express anything too negative, but I say that was good. Just that, whatever it was the mistake. But this is also good. You saw I said on the side the compliment sandwich. So just saying, good. Here's the thing you want to focus on. Good. And also, as you said, I make sure they know that this is the place for mistakes. If I don't see any mistakes, then I can't really do my job.
Yeah.
I can teach them new stuff, but I need to give them feedback on what they're doing wrong. Otherwise, what am I here for? So if they hide all their mistakes, I'm in trouble.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's right. So it's because if they're not making mistakes, if the lessons are going where they're doing everything perfectly, there are cases where they go home and practice like crazy and come in and make very few mistakes. Those things do happen. But really, if they're not making mistakes, then you're probably not pushing them high enough. They're not being challenged enough if everything is easily done. I would, the other thing there that I was going to say is that I will often say to them that we need to break it down to a smaller element. So, for instance, if they're doing a reading piece, and they keep making a mistake on a certain note or a certain section of it, a common one for that is the D note. When they learn to play the E, F, G, and then the B, C, D notes on the first two strings, that D, they often miss and make mistakes on that. And I say that's where I will stop them and go, that is a problem for everybody. Don't worry about it. We all have that problem. But I've got something for it. Let's just isolate that and practice playing from the D, using the D as the kind of the starting point, and play to each note. So you go from D to B, D to C, D to E, D to F, D to G, and they get used to it as an exercise. And then I say to them, just practice that this week. Just do that exercise going from the D to each note all week for me. Next week, come back and we'll have another look at this. And that's, you're really looking for a solution to their challenge, their problem. And if you can give them something different to do that will help them to get over that hump, that'll often make them feel better as well, rather than, going into the mode of that's wrong. Look, this might seem obvious, and I hope it does seem obvious to you guys, but I saw it so many times with teachers where I would sort of come in and I'd see them, pushing students through a piece of music, making the same mistakes over and over again, and not stopping, not sort of saying, okay, this is an area that we need to do something with, we need to work on this. They would literally push them, and you may have experienced, you may not have experienced, but where you have a student come from another teacher, they've got the book, say the progressive guitar book, and they're halfway through the book or 3/4 of the way through the book, and you go, okay, great, let's open up, and you open it up to any piece. I want you to play, you start off with an easy one, I want you to play that. And they go through it and they play most of it okay, but then there's this one area they're making a mistake. And again, it might be like that D note, but yet they're 3/4 of the way through the book. And it's like, how did you get 3/4 of the way through the book and you still can't play this back on Song of Joy? And it's because that problem has not been fixed. They've just been pushed through the book so the teacher can keep giving them a tick or make them feel like they're progressing all the time. So that's a common problem, and one that you should be aware of. Hopefully you're not doing it yourself, but it's one that happens. And so when you see a problem like that, see a weakness where they're making the same mistake over and over again, try and come up with some different exercises or some different ways they can approach that rather than just pushing forward. Even if you do push forward to the next song, which is okay, I don't have a problem with that. Don't skip the problem. Make sure they're still working on that problem as they sort of move forward, if that makes sense. Because you don't want to get stuck on one song for too long as well. You do want to keep progressing, but you want to make sure that each and every problem gets solved as well along the way. Ben Messenger, I'll kind of rephrase the question a little bit differently for you. What would you say to a student who says that they know they can do it? And this happens sometimes where you ask them to play a particular piece, and you know that they can't do it properly, but they say to you, oh, I can already do that. So they kind of want to skip it. What do you say to them?
I'll say let's go then, and I'll play with them rather than just listening. If they're being a little bit, I can do that already, I'll play with them.
Okay, cool, good. Because it's one that comes up every now and again, and you'll notice it especially with little kids. They will say things like, Mia does it, where she'll say, I already know it, I can already do it. Yeah, I know you can do it, but let's give it a go anyway. And the reason I say this is not so much for you as a teacher, because the kids will often give you a lot more respect than they give their parents, believe it or not. With their parents, they'll buck on it and they go, I can do that already. And it's important to point out to parents that they need to work on this song. And, as a parent, I need you to help them with it. Whereas the child can often go home to the parent, I can already do that, I don't need to do that. And they'll even lie. They'll say, the teacher said I'm already good at that, I don't need to do that one. It's a kind of a way to skip around it. Yes, Ben?
One of my kids, I'll say a kid who's 14, 15, and his mum came in, just popped in to pay me at the end of a lesson at the music school that I'm at, and she said, so-and-so said you didn't have anything to practice this week. Is that right? And just the fact that he's made the effort to just lie to his mum and say, yeah, we've got nothing to do this week. So it was like that was a big red light for me to say, whoa, hang on, I've done something wrong here.
Yeah. Your son's so good. Look, he doesn't need to practice anymore. As long as he comes to the lesson each week and you pay the bill, he'll be great. Well, here's the thing: is that when you get this kind of scenario, this is where you will really win the parents over. Is when they see that you're not allowing these little tricks and strategies, if you like, of the kids to get out of what they're supposed to be doing, and by making sure that they're doing the kind of things they have to do and the parents understand, and also helping the parents. So what I'm really getting at here is helping the parent with what to do when the child says, I can already do it. Now Mia does this with me, right? And I'm both the teacher and the parent. So if she's doing it, I can guarantee you other kids are doing it. I know other kids do it. But so what I do with Mia is that I say to her, yeah, I know, sweetie, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how it goes. I need you to show me how it goes. And this is a great strategy for giving parents. It's turn to the parent and say, look, get your child, and even do it in the lesson. You've got to play the one the kind of the naive one that doesn't know how to do it properly. And so I'll do this to Mia, and even though she knows quite well I can play it, of course, she still falls for it every time. You know, I'll say, I don't know, you know, and I'll even start to play it, and I go, is that right? And she'll go, no, it's like this, and that gets her to do it. Something that happened this week, which is quite funny, is that my wife has taken up playing ukulele recently. And about 2 weeks ago, she decided to take up ukulele because they're having a kind of a ukulele festival here in Cairns, and some of her friends, Japanese friends, were all playing ukuleles, and they wanted her to join. So she thought, I don't know about this, and we have a ukulele for Mia, which was her first guitar. My wife went out for a better one and started learning the ukulele. So as a result, she was practicing every day. She's been still practicing every day, like for hours every day. You know, it's in true Japanese form. They don't do it anything in half. She just picked it up. She's going hard at it, doing 3 times as much practice as I do, and so she's now quite reasonable on a ukulele. Like she's quite decent, and so. But she was what she was wanting to do is she's now playing Stand By Me, and she wanted the rhythm for it. And so she was asking me, can you show me the rhythm? And I said, Mia can show you. And Mia straight away jumps up, grabs a guitar, comes over and says, this is how you do it, Mum. And no, not like that. This is how you do it. And that makes me feel really good. And yeah, so the kids make the greatest teachers. They love teaching. It makes them feel good, makes them feel kind of like an adult if they can be the teacher. Okay. That was a good topic.
Can I ask a quick question about that before we go off the topic? We're talking about when a student's not managing to quite get a certain, for example, a D note. If, for example, if you're in a group and there's 2 students and they're both having trouble with the same bit, that's obviously easy. If only one of them is having trouble, you can bring in the exercise, both can do it for a second. But if they're having trouble with different sections, then it's the same section repeatedly, so it's definitely that bit that this person needs to work on, that bit that this person needs to work on. How would you recommend reconciling that? Would you just spend 1 or 2 renditions through each exercise for that person, and then 1, 2 through this one for that person, and then say specifically, right, I want you to practice that exercise, I want you to practice that exercise? Yeah, or would that be taking too long to go through the different examples?
No, it depends. Sometimes I do it because, you know, it's a bit like putting an orchestra together. You want each person to be playing their part, and you want it to be right. So if you know there's someone in the orchestra and you're going, that's not quite right, you can take 10 or 15 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute, 2 minutes even, and say this is how you need to do it. But you get everyone else involved as well. Because it's going to be fairly rare that, most of them have the same problems. Generally, they get stuck in the same places. And so,
even if they've just mastered it, they should still practice it. So,
yeah, like that D note. If there might be a student who's not having a problem with it, but that same student is unlikely to be having a problem anywhere else. That's the hardest part, if you like, is incorporating that D note. So if they go to the D note, they generally have the rest of the notes down, no problem, of those first 2 strings. But when so if you're helping one student, but if you've got a student, let's say, that can't even play, the E, F, G string, the notes correctly, they're not placed. Let's say they're not placing their fingers close enough to the frets or whatever. They're getting bars, those kind of little things. Then you need to sort of correct that one particular student. Say, just put your finger here, and what I call nudging. It's constantly sort of saying, like me, she doesn't like bracing. She's always, sort of not wanting to do it. But I'm always nudging her. I'm going, just brace for me. That's really good. Just don't forget to brace. I don't want to brace. And then, sometimes she'll sort of rebel, and other times she'll just do it. But I know gradually it'll fall into place. It might take another year or two. Yeah. So
that kind of leads into the second part of this, though. Can I keep going?
Sure.
The second part would be, if there are multiple mistakes, I've found that I kind of pick one and work on that one and totally ignore the others. Once that one's up to scratch, obviously maybe not perfect, but once that's something I don't feel the need to keep pushing on, I'll then move on to one of the next ones, and then the next one, rather than swapping between every now and then. Is that right, or should I swap between to keep them aware of everything?
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine. The main thing is that everyone's getting it. Everyone's understanding what needs to be done. Yeah, and look, if there's kind of some scenarios where you've got a student who's sort of lagging, who's not getting it, maybe for whatever reason there's a problem, maybe they started the group later so they don't quite have it, or maybe it's the other side of it where they're not practicing enough. It might even be worthwhile putting a video together and saying, I'm going to make a YouTube video up and I'm going to send you the link. And the great thing about tools today, things like YouTube, is that once you make that video, you don't have to make it again. You can use the same video for the next student who comes along with that same problem.
Yeah.
And that really is part of my bigger vision for G4, is that we have all these videos that we can direct students to when they have a problem, rather than getting too bogged down into the group, and turning the group and your classes more into, like, aerobics classes, where it's more of a session of getting them going and sweating it out and going hard for half an hour. Doing things like pushing them through for half an hour to show them what a half an hour practice session is like, because we're not very good at pushing ourselves. That's the thing about human nature. And again, I always go back to this, but it is an evolutionary trait in that our brains actually use a lot of energy, and the energy that we have used to be needed for survival, for hunting, for eating and getting to the next day. So we tended to rest a lot. And that's why we are naturally lazy, because we're conserving our energy. And so when we ask people to do something, or when to learn guitar or anything that requires energy, because you're actually, when you're learning, this is the thing, and you can see it with young kids, is the prefrontal cortex here uses a lot of energy to learn. When you're passively watching TV and being entertained, you're not using much energy to do that. But when you're actually learning something, there's a lot of energy being used up, and that's why concentration, you try and get someone to concentrate for half an hour. It's quite a task. They found people tend to phase out after 10 or 15 minutes, and that's why I have this 5, 10, 10, 5, because the 5 is really just the introduction. Then I go into the 10 by 10, 2 lots of 10, because I can focus them all on for 10 minutes, and then I can cross over and do another 10 minutes, then 5 minutes at the end, wind down. So this is the kind of an ideal, but people need this, and that's why you guys are going to be in jobs for quite a while until they come up with AI that can do the job. But for now, people need a coach, person to push them, and that's really what you want to be spending the majority of your time doing. You don't want to be spending the majority of your time learning how to do things, because the how-to of learning guitar is all covered. It's out there. It's on the internet. What they want is the push. They want someone behind them going, come on, go, go, go. It's to say you go and do some fitness. You do it on your own versus do it with a friend. I can almost bet, and again, it's researched quite well, is you're much more likely to stick with it long term if you do it with a friend or with a group than you are to do it by yourself. Go on a jog. Go jog with a friend. You're more likely to go a longer distance than you are. I used to go jogging with a friend of mine in Sydney, and we could jog together for an hour because we spent a lot of time chatting as we were jogging. But go for an hour by yourself, and it's torture. For some people, they love it, but an hour is a long jog by yourself. So the same applies here, and this is where we want to motivate them. We want to use the groups to keep them in the game, because they will learn guitar if they stay in the game long enough.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's move on. We'll use the next. We've got more time now. The other topic that I wanted to cover, does anyone have a question? If you've got a question, go for it. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next topic I want to cover.
I just have one comment. That's right.
Sure.
I was teaching my band this morning. So we're into the second term. So they've only had about 10 or 11 lessons altogether. So they get a full band rehearsal every week and then a tutorial on their individual instruments. But we spoke this morning about how, because they're all learning, they tend to kind of, it's head down, play their instrument, they're not paying any attention to anything else around them except concentrating so hard on what they're doing. And they're doing that, a lot of them are doing that normal trick of memorizing it. So they practice it so many times that they memorize it. And I can see when we play all together, you know, they're looking around the room even though they're playing the notes perfectly. But I spoke today about the importance of looking at it like we're a team. And we're all, and you know, lots of them do sport, school sport and weekend sport. So I, like you, I love the sports analogy and talking about training and, you know, the performance in the game. So we talked about teamwork and how we all need to be listening to each other and how I'm the coach of their team and I'm the one that decides whether we go this way or this way. And did a few things like, you know, got them to all hold a note and then hold the note until I brought them off. So I think doing things like that in your groups works well as well. And even having one of them, so if you've got one that's struggling with rhythm, you can get one of them to count while the other one plays. So even though they're not both playing all the time, they're all engaged in the lesson and they're all working towards the same common goal, but you can help the one that's struggling with in a particular area. So yeah, just the whole team thing, kids love feeling like they belong to something, and adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing that team exercise, like building the whole idea of teamwork is, yeah, it's a valuable skill in itself. And you know, I think one of the things that really kept me in teaching music, because like everybody, you know, and if we're all honest, we didn't pick up our instruments with this dream of being music teachers. That wasn't the initial spark. It may have come later, and for me it came as a kind of a thing. It was a little bit ego and a little bit I can make some money out of this. You know, as a teenager, it just started off. And actually, I remember really the early stages when I was at school. The music teacher said to me, "Could you teach the younger kids the guitar?" Because I was learning the guitar at the time. I could already play drums, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that cool." And I just took it as a compliment. Oh, I'm good enough, am I? And so yeah, so I started teaching the other kids at school, and then that sort of kind of went from there to where friends were asking me as well. And so as soon as I left school, I was 18, and I literally started teaching people. I just started, you know, advertising and doing whatever. But the kind of the real driver that kept me in teaching was the fact that I started to see how you could develop kids and you could develop them into, you know, develop these other skills that they weren't getting at school. And let's face it, school, they do the best job that they can, but school really, it's really difficult for a teacher who's dealing with big classes and, you know, has a kind of here in Australia, it's quite strict now, where the school teachers have to follow a very strict curriculum. And a very strict way of teaching. So there's not a lot of room for flexibility or bringing in anything. So even if they've got some other ideas, they're not allowed to implement them. And the problem is that these are coming from the top down. They're coming from government officials who have nothing to do with education. And I won't get into my kind of views on this, but I think you get the sentiment here. So I saw it as an opportunity to help kids, you know, develop confidence, you know, to develop teamwork through the group teaching, to, you know, develop social skills, and just to gain a love of learning through something that they enjoyed and wanted to do. So what Emma was talking about there is fantastic, because she's teaching them how to work as a team, and there is nothing that will take you to success faster than knowing how to bring a team together, because what you can achieve on your own is nothing compared to what you can achieve with a team. And as you as you have that ability to build teams around you, then that's when you're going to succeed. You know, my success is not me, it's the people who I surround myself with, and it's you guys, it's other people I know, it's family, and I'm always thinking from the team perspective, and that's where if you can teach that as you learn it yourself, as we know, the best way to learn something is to teach it, and that way you can start to see within your groups as to whether they're working as teams, and if they're not working as teams, then you've got work to do. You've got to work out, how do I get these guys to work as a team? How do I get them to become friends and hang out after school and want to spend their weekends together and be emailing each other, texting each other? How do I get that happening? Because that's how I'm going to build this team spirit. Right. Beautiful. Thanks, Emma. That was excellent. Okay, so the other thing that I want to sort of talk about here is the 80-20. And the 80-20 is one of those things that gets nowhere near as much attention as it deserves, and it's something that if you implement into your life as a rule, it's something that I think about almost daily, is the 80-20, and I think you guys understand the 80-20, but just for anyone who doesn't, it's literally that 80% of results come from 20% of your efforts. And this kind of breakdown, it's almost like a universal law, and it's not, as we know, it's not strictly 80-20. It depends on the situation. But what it's saying is there's not an equal, for the efforts. Unfortunately, Einstein's theory is correct in science, but it's not correct in the sense of life and what we see around us. There's not an equal opposite reaction to everything. There's for effort, there's a reaction, but the way that it pans out is in different ways. So as an example of the 80-20 rule, you can look at your own guitar practice. 80% of the results you get from your playing will come from only 20% of your practice. So it means that the 80% of your practice is actually not that productive. And if you can narrow it down, and that's what the G4 method was all about. It was all about getting down to what is the 20% that will give you the 80% of the results. And I realized it was developing skills, narrowing it down and just developing on those core skills. Now, the thing that you want to do is apply it to everything that you do, everything that your life, whether it be your personal life, whether it be your work life. So if we look at some examples, and I'll get you guys to pull out some examples, but I'll just throw the first example up, and then you can try and throw some at me. But I asked the question in the Facebook group, how many student inquiries did you get this month? And it was 0. Nobody had 0. Then there was 1 to 5, which was quite a few of the teachers had that. And then the next was 10 to 20, and there was 2 teachers in that. And then 20 and over, there was 1 teacher in that. So there's the 80-20 rule at work. We've got 3 teachers who are getting 80% of the inquiries just from that very quick survey. So this is where what we want to be doing is looking at, why are they getting 80% of the inquiries? Why aren't we getting an even spread? Why isn't everybody getting at least a 50-50? Like, what's this 80-20 going on? So I go, one other example, I go back to the days that when I was working in sales, and I would literally come in and do the majority of the sales. I would work 3 days a week. I was working on Thursday nights, Saturdays and Sundays, and this was a part-time job in retail because I was actually started teaching guitar at that point and playing in band, so I was only working those 3 days. Just in those 3 days, I would sell probably around 70% of the total sales for the week just in those 3 days. And there were 6 other guys, I think, roughly 6 or 7, it varied, but who were on the floor. And those guys, except for one other guy, all worked all week. There was only me and one other guy who were casual, yet I got the majority of the sales. So I was making up, less than 20% of the team, and I was getting, let's say 60 to 70% of the sales most weeks. And that was because it wasn't actually because I was a better salesperson at that time. Perhaps I had a few more skills, but there was another guy who was very good as well. But what it was I'd worked out the 80-20 under that environment. What I'd done was I found that if you answer the phone, you would get more sales than if you just waited on the floor. And the reason is that, and I learned this, I read it in a book at the time, is that people who call are actually often more serious than people who walk into your shop. because people who walk in are often just casually walking along the street. They just come in for a look. Whereas someone who's ringing, they're actually after something. So I made sure that I always got the phone. And the other guys thought the other way. They thought, I don't want the phone because the person's not here. I can't get it. These were the days before you could get a credit card over the phone or anything. All right, this is back in the late 80s. So you had to get them to come into the shop. So that was, I would get them on the phone, but I had to get them to come in. But I would talk them into coming in, saying, look, I'll put this aside for you. It's this is the price I'll give you. I'll see you in an hour, and then they would come in and buy it. So that's why I did that. But I had that's just one example that I want to give you. So I want to go through you guys now and see if you can give me some examples of where the 80-20 applies in your business or in your life. I'll start with Ben Arcady. Ben, what's your 80-20 example?
I'm trying to pick one, just going through the different areas and thinking there's options in all of them. So with the emails, I only need to spend 20% of the time I do writing them and checking them, and the other 80% of the time I spend checking them and checking them again and checking them again. Doesn't need to be done really, but that's just my character, and it's getting shorter and shorter the amount of time I take to spend emails. But
okay, so would you say with the emails that when you look at your time, 80% of your time is spent on emails that really only deserve 20% of your time? Would that be a good way to look at it?
I was more saying each email, of the time I spend on each email, I only need to spend about a fifth of that time on it.
Okay, all right, yeah. So you need to sort of break down how you can, if you look at one email and you say, okay, this is the time that I spend on that one email, you can then decide, if I could only have a fifth of that time, so let's say you spend 5 minutes on an email, if I can only have 1 minute to process this email, what would I do? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can try that. You don't have to necessarily try and shorten up an email on someone who's important, a student or whatever. But just try it as a test. Just say, okay, there goes the clock. I got 1 minute to process the email, and then have a look at what you did in 1 minute, and then fix it after that. Just as a bit of a test. Okay, that's a good example. Okay, so Ben Messenger.
Weight training. When you'll do repetitions, you'll do a certain number of repetitions on a certain exercise, but it's them last, I'm sure it's not exactly 80-20, but it's the last few, when you're killing yourself and really pushing, they're actually making the muscle grow under stress. The ones you did all up to that, really, as far as your body's concerned, are just warm-ups. It's the last couple where it hurts, that's what's doing the good, making the muscle grow.
Yep, so an extra rep on the end is worth 10 of the previous ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so fantastic. And do you know Tim Ferriss? Have you ever looked at any of his stuff?
No.
Tim Ferriss. He does a lot of this kind of thing. He wrote the book The 4-Hour Workweek, and he basically said that you can do a 40-hour week in 4 hours using the kind of the 80-20 idea. It's just about doing the things that matter rather than all this stuff that doesn't matter. And he's also he is a world champion martial artist of some description. He's also very into fitness training and so forth. And he talks about what you're doing about weight training and how you can actually train for literally 5 minutes a day and build a lot of muscle mass. And literally just 5 minutes a day is all you need to do. And there was another study done as well in the UK where they showed that if you want to lose fat, that you're better than jogging for half an hour a day. You're better just doing a couple of minutes at high intensity. So you do about 5 minutes. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a UK doco on it. And yeah, do 5 minutes of high intensity, but you do them in, I think, 30 seconds at 85% or something like that. And you do 5 of those.
You do Tabata.
What's that?
You can do Tabata as well, which is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest.
Yep.
which
Cool.
is
And you do,
actually Japanese. Yeah, the Japanese developed it. Sorry, the Japanese developed it for the Olympic training.
Right. So say it again. 20 seconds on and 10 seconds
20
off.
20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest, but you do 8 cycles of that, of the same exercise.
Right. Yep. So you're using the same muscle.
It's terrible. Yep.
Okay. Great. Well, and this UK documentary, it was in one of the university labs, the science labs they were doing it, and they actually showed how it was literally just a few minutes a day of high intensity exercise, and it burned more fat than doing a half an hour jog a day or 20 minutes jog a day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was significantly different. Okay, excellent, Ben. Shane, what's an 80-20 example?
Well, I've been trying to do sort of what you were just talking about, but with my sort of admin kind of stuff, checking and responding to emails, making sure I have my schedule straight for the week, and organizing all my charts and everything, which traditionally takes me a very long time, and I never get it all done. I've been recently trying to, like, I set a timer, and I have my list, and I say, this has to be done by the end of the hour, or the half hour, or however much time I give myself. And I find that I definitely get more done that way. But it's still something I'm working on. I haven't perfected it by any means, but that's something that's been on my mind lately. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. So if you segment things down, and that's what I do, is that I break my day down into 10-minute slots. So everything is 10 minutes. So I say, okay, I've got 10 minutes now to process emails, and so just for 10 minutes. And what it does, it stops you from switching. It stops you from looking at your emails, to going to your Facebook, going to some news report, going to a website. It stops you doing all this stuff. You go, I've got 10 minutes to get through as many emails as I can. Let's go. And what I do is I work through as many of the emails as I can in that 10 minutes, and then and I don't, if it's an email that needs a good response that I need time on, I'll actually just put that one aside, and I'll come back to it at the end, spend the time on that one email, because I want to do, particular emails. I want to give them the attention that they need. It's not a matter of shortchanging someone by giving them 2 minutes of your time when they really deserve 15, 20 minutes for you to think about the email. But what I do is I make sure that I don't, if I'm on that limited time, you get those emails where they'll have a kind of headline, and it'll look something interesting, and so you'll click on the link and you'll go to it, and it'll be something about some guitarist that whose dog played guitar while he was playing the left hand, and the dog was playing the right hand, or some ridiculous thing like that. And you think, I just wasted 5 minutes of my life looking at this stupid website. So when you've got that kind of timer going, 10 minutes, you don't do it. You just go, no, it's not important. Bang, move on to the next thing. And that's the power of doing that, of having the timer. Okay, cool. Emma, what's an example you would give of 80-20? Are you there?
Children, so I spend 80% of my time cleaning up mess that I only made 20% of. Does that count?
Well, it took them 20% of the time to do what takes you 80% of the time to clean up.
So I need to get them to pick up after themselves. That's the message from that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, pretty much the same as mostly the same as the others have said. It's assigning yourself times to do things and sticking to what you set yourself in that time.
Yeah, it's good. What you're saying there actually is very important, because often what happens is that thinking of this 80-20 thing, you can spend a lot of 80% of your time doing things that, and if you look at your day, 80% of your time is often spent doing things that have no long-term value. And by that, I mean, you're not building systems. You're not, you're not setting up new customers or new students. You're not sort of developing your program. You're not improving your studio. You're spending 80% of your time doing things that really have no consequence tomorrow, next week, next year. If that makes sense. Yeah. So
one of the other things I do, one of the other businesses I'm involved in, I analyse my dollar productive activities, and it comes back to the slight edge and the compound effect of you make small habits, same as lifting weights or getting the kids to clean up after themselves or practice or whatever it is. It's that those small things done habitually that makes the biggest difference. So that's what I'm focusing on, definitely.
Yeah, and that's it. If you can look at the value of your time, and if you put a value on your time and you say, well, what's my highest value? When am I earning the most money in the day? And when you're earning the most money is wherever you're getting paid the most for your time. So if you're teaching a group of 5 kids for half an hour, and they're all paying you, say, $25 each, and you're basically getting $125 for that half an hour, which is $250 an hour. Anything else that you're doing that's not paying you $250 an hour is, I'm talking work, I'm not talking personal, anything work related is really a waste of time. It's not the best use of your time. Now, right now, you may need to have that part-time job where you only get $10, $15 an hour. It could be doing flyers, it could be doing stationery, it could be doing your accounts, etc. I'll give you a quick example. I go and I check into my list, which is my Aweber list, and I have to download the list, and I copy it and take it to my spreadsheet, which is where I sort it, and then I use it to actually put statistics together, so I know how many people are inquired, how much I'm spending on Facebook advertising to get that number of subscribers, and how many of them are turning into actual clients, etc., etc. So doing all your numbers, which is what you guys would be doing, something similar as well. Now, the time it takes me to go to Aweber, to log in, to go to the right page, to download or to select the right period to download, then to cut and copy and paste those across to my other spreadsheet, takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, I've been doing this, thinking I need to do this, but in my normal 80-20 assessment, I realized I don't need to be doing this. What I need to be doing instead of doing this is building a system for CISA in the Philippines to do it for me. And so that's what I've done, and that was the project that I did today. So, and what I do now is I make sure that I allocate time each day to building a system of some description. So, as part of one of my 10-minute slots, I actually have a couple, but just to sort of keep this in the 10 minutes, I have a 10-minute slot where I spend time building a system based on giving it and allocating it to someone else. Now, you can do that within your own business. Even if you can't afford to pay someone right now, you build the system and then you allocate it when you can afford to pay someone. But in the meantime, you've got the system in place. So if everything that you do is systemized, then it can be ready to hand over to somebody else at the time that you can afford it. And now's the time to be building the systems. But here's the thing, is we don't build systems because to build a system, this system that I've created for CISA, it's actually taken me about a week, I guess, but all up in time, I've probably spent about 3 hours putting the system together, and I still haven't taught her how to do it yet. I haven't handed it over to her, which will take another half an hour to an hour to do that. And but when I know that I can just download it myself, it takes 20 minutes or 15 minutes. Your temptation is to do the short thing. It's I'll just do it myself. Why bother with the system? And that's what you've got to get out of the habit of. You've got to get out of the habit of taking the easy short road and take the high road, the long road, if you like, and build the system for everything that you do. So that's really, to me, the highest order of the 80-20, that your time is being spent building systems. Because even more so than actually getting paid for your time. So if you know we're looking at $250 an hour for your time, even that doesn't matter when you're looking at systems, because the idea of building systems, you know, Henry Ford built a system that built a car, and then he was able to build, you know, thousands, or I don't know how many cars he built. Ford in the end built millions of cars, of course, but by building that particular system allowed him to make many of the same cars. And that's really, if you look at the people who have been successful in anything, how they do it, they build systems. Even performers, people who become, you know, very highly accomplished musicians, composers. I was reading, that's what it was a documentary I saw with the guy's name. His name eludes me for a minute, but he wrote lots and lots of famous tunes, and that he just had a system. I'm sorry, it was John Williams, the guy that wrote Star Wars and you know, all those sort of movie things and so forth. His system was that every day he had a particular routine he went through. So he wrote music every day, and I think even to this day he still does. He's written music every day of his life. What he does is he wants a completed piece each day, no matter how bad it is. Each day he sets himself that I've got to write a piece today. And he's been doing that, and there's authors who have been doing that. Bryce Courtney, I remember seeing a thing on Bryce Courtney. He's the same. He has to write a book every year. Every year he's got to put a book out, whether or not. So he has his deadline every year to write this book. His family's fallen apart as a result of it, but he's gotten every book out every year. But you know, you don't have, that doesn't have to happen. You know, your family falls apart because you don't have them built into your plan. If you've got your family built into your plan, you've got your relationships, then that's not going to happen. But this is how you achieve success, is by building systems to get things done. And yeah, so on the 80-20, I'll bring it back to the 80-20 here, and that is that you can get whenever you feel like you're kind of burning out, you're burning the candle at both ends, that time is against you, that's when you're not really applying the 80-20. You're working so hard and you're doing all this time, then you're not looking at the 80-20, because it means you're probably doing a lot more than you need to be doing. And you need to get back to where you say, what if I only had 20% of the time? What if instead of working 10 hours a day, I could only work 2 hours a day? What would I do in that 2 hours? What would matter the most? So let me sort of, to kind of round this up on the 80-20 and bring you guys back into it, let's just go around again. I'll start, Ben Arcadi. What is the 20% of your day that you think is the most important?
Do you mean activity-wise?
I was going to say, yeah, I know Ben's sleeping.
That would be good. I was probably just going to say flyers though, because obviously I haven't started, well, flyers and sorting my video out, because I still haven't done that video that I was speaking to you and Emma about. And
yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Always the same hat. Got to stick with the same hat. It's reliable. Can't lay it down. But yeah, those flyering yeah, for the basically marketing, but flyering is my offline, and that's the thing I am doing, and I'm probably using that as an excuse to not do the video, which is what I need to not do.
Yeah.
Well, with the wardrobe in the house, I come back sweaty, and I'm like, I can't make a video now. Obviously, I don't look right.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I would put the flyers way ahead of the video. Okay. Let me do it like this, okay, and play it out. Let's imagine that you only had 2 hours a day. Let's just get your teaching out of it, right? Because your teaching is just that's
oh yeah, I'm ignoring that. That has to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Teaching is just part of your day, and so. But looking at the rest of your day, let's just take 2 hours out of your day and say you did flyers for 2 hours a day. Now, if you went out and did that 2 hours of flyers and you did that for a month, we're talking like 30 hours there, which is going to bring you, let's say 6 students, okay? Let's say for every 5 hours you get a student. So there's your 6 students. Those 6 students now will bring in you let's say that let's just say half of them stay enrolled. I mean, let's just say 50%, you lose the other 3. So then you're getting 100. We'll do it in Australian dollars.
Yeah,
you're getting. It's easier for me. Yeah. You're getting $300, all right, a month now from these guys. That means you can take that $300 and you can pay someone to go and do the flyers with you. And so instead of getting 6 students, you're going to now get 12 in the next month, because you're going to take that $300 and invest it into getting someone to help you, and that $300 should bring you, well, let's say $100 so it's going to bring another 3 students, so it'll bring you up to 9 students in the second month, and then in the third month it's going to bring it up to to where you're bringing in, say, another 3 students, so then you'll go to 12. But you'll have more money now, and so what it starts to do is it starts to grow exponentially, and I won't sort of play it right out, but the way this goes, that in 12 months from now, then you are possibly enrolling 100 students a month, and this, Emma can tell you, this is exactly what happened for us. Literally the phone was ringing like crazy, and sometimes we're getting up to 10 calls a day. And we'd stopped the marketing it by this point, because it was just too much. It was like, it's too many students enrolling, couldn't keep up with it. So, but here's what happens, is that as the money comes in, then you can pay someone to do the video for you. You can just say, look, here's $5,000, just tell me when to turn up, you guys do my hair, make me look good, write the script for me if you have to, whatever. I don't want to know anything about it, I just want to turn up and do it. And so, you understand? That's the 20%.
I understand. Although I think, while I should be making sure the flyers are the higher priority, the flyers require constant time investment, whereas the video, I should have done it by now. Once I've done it, it's done, and it's on the website. All I have to do is click Facebook, $100 campaign, done. 3 minutes of work, and then it will be going while I do the flyers. So that's the 80-20 at work. I can do both, but just get it done rather than do the flyers first, come back sweaty. I should just get the video done in the morning, go out. But I'm always nervous. I'm like, am I too tired? Am I this? Don't like the video. I'll get it done.
Do 10 minutes of the video every day. Don't do the whole video in one go.
Yeah. No, it could be easily done. Just haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Look, what you can do, like Emma's saying, is break it down into steps. Okay, because that's often the hardest part about achieving any goal, is that we think that we're not clear on the steps and what each step will take, and there are steps involved. One is setting your camera up, another is learning your script, another is rehearsing your script, another is preparing, making sure you've had a haircut or whatever it is you need for the video. The next is uploading it to your computer, uploading it to YouTube, and then copying the code so it goes onto your website. So if you break all the steps down, and then you could just work on one step at a time. Okay, I'll just do step 1 today. Tomorrow I'll do step 3. Okay, so they're the kind of things you want to do, because there's this kind of perfectionist nature in all of us that often prevents us from doing it, because you think, I don't want to go to all that trouble and it be a crappy video. I want to make a decent video. So I want to do it properly. I don't want to just do it rushed. So I really need a whole day. I don't have a whole day. I won't do it. That's how we talk yesterday.
I think it might help to share your plan as well. So by sharing your plan, by breaking down your list, we are going to hold you accountable, because we're going to say,
have you done this yet?
And for anyone, at the end of the week we can say, hey Ben, you said you were going to have done steps 1 to 3 this week. Where are you up to? And it comes down to with your students, with your practice log. As soon as they become accountable, they start doing the right thing. I've got people that eat the wrong food, so I get them a food diary, and then they miraculously start eating the right things because they know someone's going to be checking what they've written down. So if you just write your list and break down the steps, you can just put in the group, hey, I'm going to do step 1 by Friday, or I'm going to do step 1. I'm going to do 1 step a day for the next 5 days.
And give me a verbal kicking if I don't.
Well,
same principle as the practice log.
Yeah, you don't even need a butt kicking because you won't let it get to that because you won't want everyone to think you're not doing what you've committed to doing.
Yeah. But I've said it now, haven't I? I've got no excuse.
Yep.
By next Thursday, it's done.
Yeah, it's a look. Just lay out the steps, and I think you've got the ingredients now. Just do it. Just put the steps out, and maybe tomorrow is your first day. Just dedicate 10, 20 minutes to writing out the steps. That's it. That's day one. Day two, start on step.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, and look, if there's really something there that makes you not want to do it, but if we sort of go back to the flyers for a second, and you think about doing the flyers every day, then knowing how it's going to pan out over the next year, 2 years, is what drives you, and that's what drove me. If I said to any of you, and this is where the doubt comes within your own playing, if I said to you, practice for 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day on your guitar for me, and I guarantee you that you'll be the next big sensation. You'll be the next guitar player that everybody's talking about in 5 years from now, but you've got to practice 4 hours a day for me. You would probably do it because you know there's a guarantee. The reason that most people don't do it is because there's no guarantees. Make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the flyers, I've already seen the result, but it's not that I don't think that the video will have the result. It's just, well, to be honest, this is probably a huge discussion, huge topic here, but I kind of feel slightly like with the area that we all work with, we're limited to, obviously more people will be born and more people will move in, and over a long period we'll have loads of new customers, but I kind of feel like the customers within this next 3 or 4 years are the potential customers. So I feel like if the flyers, I know they're good. I'm handing them out, they're working, no problem. If I do the video wrong, I feel like anyone who sees it will have a slight negative effect. Do you see what I mean? Obviously that's the amount that I'm letting that feeling cause problems for me is a bit too much. But I'm just constantly aware of the fact that I don't want to put off any customers because that will probably put them off for a good period.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I never had a video, so we didn't have any problem signing up students. Emma did all the signing up, or did a lot of the signing up, and there were no videos of us on the internet. Videos are a new. They're a recent addition, so I wouldn't let that concern you. People are going to get your flyers. They're probably going to look at the website briefly and then they're going to give you a call. So don't let that hold you back. Do your video when you can, but if you stick to your flyers, it's pretty well guaranteed.
Yeah.
I can't give any 100% guarantees, but I can probably give you a 99% guarantee that it's going to work for you. Ben,
definitely. Look at the numbers, guaranteed.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll go to Ben now. Yep, Ben.
Yeah, I've got to go in 2 minutes, guys. Just a quick one. Seth Godin did a podcast a couple of years ago with a load of entrepreneurs. I will find the name and stick it on Facebook. It's a series of about 15 or 20 half-hour, 40-minute podcasts from this 2 or 3 day workshop they did with entrepreneurs. And he talks about getting your ducks in a row when you've got the fairground thing with when you shoot the ducks as they pop up.
Yep.
And he was saying, rather than wait until you get all your ducks in a row, why don't you do something with just one duck?
Yep.
And I thought it was simple but genius. And he said it's actually probably more an American thing, that the culture is that it's got to be right, it's got to be perfect before we go to market. Forget it, get it out there, and you can fix it as you go. But if you never get it out there, it doesn't matter how perfect it's going to be. If you never get it out there, it doesn't matter because no one sees it.
A fluffy toy.
Yeah. Yep. That's fantastic, and it is like that. And Seth Godin, he's a great example because he just said what you've got to do is ship. If you don't ship, then nothing's happening. And musicians do it all the time. They have all this music in their garage or on their computers or whatever, and they don't ship it. And he's done with these books. He's put it out there, and I'm guilty of that. I've written stacks of music, and I've only released a very small amount of it because I just never felt it was good enough. And that's how we feel. But once you start shipping it, what happens is people start saying to you, giving you comments which you can use feedback. It becomes a feedback loop, so you can improve what you're doing. But you also find your audience. that's what surprised me, was there were certain people who did like what I was playing more than I liked. You know what I mean? So you've got it. Yeah, it's a great kind of addition there, or comment about Seth Godin, because he's obviously written a lot of books over the years, and he's had some huge successful books, which has made him probably the most successful writer in that thing. But really, only a few of his books have been what you would call highly successful. A lot of these other books got read after his successful books, because people like me, we want to hear what he's got next. But it was the first book. It's like a Harry Potter series, if you like. The first Harry Potter is the one that everybody went crazy over, and then they buy the next ones because they want to continue, because they kind of got into that style of writing or that story. So. Okay, cool. Well, we might leave it there because we're up. The 90 minutes is up. Another great talk. Thanks, guys, for dropping by, and thanks, Emma, for dropping in as well and giving some of your wisdom. All right, so I shall see you guys next time.
See you next Thursday.
Oh.
All right, see you
guys.
Have a great day.
And I'll have a video.
Yes, we'll be looking for it.
See you later, Dave. Bye.
Bye-bye.